Here we go. Today is Sunday, October 20th. Holy cow. Of 2024. And this is episode 283 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Kalat.
How you doing, Jerry?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. Sunday. It's beautiful. Love the fall. Above ground. These are all good things.
It is good. It's been really unseasonably cold here, but it's been great. Loving life and having fun. So can't complain at all.
Nice. You're unemployed.
That's true.
I mean, I hear that's the thing these days. So,
yeah, especially in IT. Like either you're unemployed voluntarily or uninvoluntarily. So
it is a weird time.
Yeah,
like these slow moving, creeping layoffs that just keep trickling through the industry lately.
But, yeah, I've had quite a few people ask for assistance, and it's getting to the point now where it's a little disheartening. Yeah. The job market is just really bad. So my hope is that the economy starts to trend in a better direction. Interest rates continue to fall. Maybe we'll start to see some new startup activity and hiring. But it's just a weird time.
Yeah, and I know I make light of it a little bit, but I feel very fortunate to still have a good, solid job, and I don't take that for granted at all. There are times when being unemployed sounds delightful until that paycheck stops, and you're like, "Oh no, that wait a minute, wait a second."
It's really painful when you see the money leaving
right.
and no money coming in to replace it. Yes, that's the problem.
Anyway. Like the unending march to doom that is cybersecurity.
Yes, with apparently less people to fight it.
Right.
So just a reminder that the thoughts and opinions we express on the show are ours and do not represent those of our employers.
Indeed.
First up, we have a article from Bleeping Computer. The title is Google, 70% of exploited flaws disclosed in 2023 were 0 days. This was a pretty eye-opening article. There's a couple of data points I wanted to cover here. Obviously, the headline covered the big news. 97 of 128 exploited vulnerabilities were 0 days. Now, I don't know where the 128 comes from. It seems to me like to be lower, and so maybe this is vulnerabilities added to the KEV list. I'm not entirely sure what the 128 comes from, but what is interesting,
it's 138.
138.
It's okay.
I have bad note-taking skills.
It's all right. I'm here to help. That's what I'm here for. Just to correct you in your inevitable, often and many mistakes.
I should run for president soon.
Not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Not going there. Don't talk about politics.
But what I found interesting, though, is that it was 138 out of 28,092 CVEs in 2023.
Which is such a tiny fraction.
Very tiny. Which is interesting. Like the entirety of patch management is designed to prevent malicious exploitation of vulnerabilities. And so you can think that not everybody or not every organization has to deal with all 28,000 CVEs, but you have to deal with quite a lot
to get these.
But at the end of the day, it's a small percentage that you actually that actually creates the problem.
As an aside, I think there's one other value to patch management aside from just vulnerability management, which is keeping your technology current and staying away from end of life. And I do think if you're patching on a regular basis to a current version, when you do have to patch for some sort of urgent vulnerability, you're usually closer to the version that you need, and it's usually less disruptive. So it's like a little bit of pain spread out over a lot of time versus one big jump that can be very disruptive. So I do think there's value in keeping your technology patched, even if it's not for a vulnerability. My own personal soapbox.
Very well said. Very well said. The longer you go, the harder it becomes. The farther back you are, and in some cases, it becomes nigh impossible, and then you're really screwed because you've got some exigent threat and you can't actually fix it.
Right.
So that was one. There were 56 different vendors represented in the 138. The number that probably alarmed me the most was the average time to exploitation dropped from 32 days to 5 days. Basically, the implication there is that once a vulnerability is being exploited, it's from the time it becomes known until the time it's exploited has dropped from 32 days down to 5.
And it's even more stark when you go a little bit further back in time. The article was saying between 20 and in 2018, it was 63 days. In 2021, it was 32 days, and now it's 5 days.
Which, if you think back, most organizations' security policies require you to patch. Like the typical one is high severity within 30 days, and medium within 60 days or 90 days, and low within 180 days or a year or whatever, right? Just every company's got a little nuance to that. That top end, the 30 days is now it was unworkable before,
right?
But now it's like, what are we doing? What is the 30 days by you?
If I try to put a little bit more positive spin on it, this 5 days is to the first exploit, the first known found exploit. What's the average of your average company? When are they likely to get hit? So if you look at the breadth of all companies, everybody with a presence on the internet, that's the first one noted that they know about in their research, and there's lots of caveats around that. What's the likelihood of your company getting hit within that 5 days? I don't know. And don't get me wrong, like the urgency to patch is important, but this whole game is a race against patching the one that's going to bite you without knowing what that's going to be. You're rolling the dice every time because you cannot patch everything. We know we try, and we know that fails. We know that the whole SLA based approach, well, you just have to get everything patched. It sounds great on paper. Auditors love it, but it's not real in the real world. It's not realistic. So how do you pick and choose where to focus your efforts? For me, I try to have a really good idea of what my externally facing attack surface is. I know that's not the only way to come in, and we talk about more of this in the article here, but for me, it's what's on the edge, whatever that edge is these days, which is a moving target that's open to anonymous traffic from the internet is the first thing I try to keep an eye on and inventory, understand what's there. And then hopefully when I see something come out, which again, there's a problem here because we're relying a little bit on news and that whether or not a patch is available. When we're talking 0 days, that's not always the case, but I try to keep that stuff that's on the edge patched as well as I can as my priority. Doesn't always happen, but that's at least one approach. There's some prioritization, and I do, as much as I rip on CISA, the KEV list is not bad as a prioritization tool. Yeah, it's a tough one. Sorry, I know
no, it's all good. I think the KEV list is, if you were to ask me 2 years ago, I thought the KEV list was a joke. They were adding vulnerabilities like far long after the average IT person knows that it's being exploited. So it was a joke, but now I think it's actually quite respectable.
Yeah.
So I know that we did use that, and like Tenable's Viper score was also, we found to be quite useful. And I think there's a whole cottage industry of analytics companies who are trying to help you better prioritize which vulnerabilities are most likely to be exploited based on attributes of the vulnerability itself, but also like where it's placed in your network, what you were saying. And so I think that given the downward pressure on time, because look, I think I agree with your thesis about not all companies are getting exploited within 5 days. But yeah, I completely agree with that. But the reality is, I think it's going down, and I also think
Yeah.
that one of the challenges we have is it's an average, which means that some of them are happening faster than that, and some of them are happening. But I think that what we're starting to see is a lot of this now being automated and done at scale and less in a targeted way. And we've seen that with a lot of the firewall type vulnerabilities. The exploitation is being done in an automated fashion and collecting, harvesting compromised systems to then later sell to some bad actor as part of a ransomware as a service or what have you.
Yeah, I think it certainly makes it more challenging. The other thing I had in my notes that was interesting is we've had this theory in the industry for a long time that most threat actors weren't going to burn 0 days on low level targets. This sort of flies in the face of that a little bit.
Oh,
And
100%.
so now I'm starting to wonder, if is that accurate? Is that true? Are 0 days really being preserved for nation state attacks against high value targets, or are ransomware actors now buying them and using
I
them or trying to discover them?
So my intuition is that it's a little bit technology specific because I
Hmm.
think that you would say a nation state adversary might not burn 0 days on an iPhone or an
Hmm.
Android device because they want to use that to target like really highly specific individual cases with high fidelity intelligence gathering. But if it's like a 0 day in WordPress, some WordPress plugin or Zendesk or some Adobe product, I think they're being exploited as they're found.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So what can we do? how, how, how do we tighten things up to deal with this?
There's a, I, that is the $1 billion question.
Right.
I think that we've talked about a little bit about this in the past around the importance of auto update.
Hmm.
And by the way, I don't mean this as like a just as a consumer side thing.
Right.
Certainly I think we have to become more comfortable with auto update and more accepting of the potential downside that comes with it because it's more palatable than the alternative. In my experience at least. But I also think that on the provider side, and I think that software providers and equipment providers need to do a better job with their auto update. Now, we get back into the discussion of aircraft quality software, but I think there's still a middle ground. I think there's an opportunity to do better without going full life critical stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's the you're weighing two risks here: the risk of production disruption or downtime due to a patch that causes an unforeseen interaction, versus a disruption of a bad actor leveraging an exploit. Now,
Hmm.
the other problem here is that we're also talking about a lot of these 0 days that don't have patches yet.
That's a great
So
point.
then, so then it becomes more a game of, how do I contain it? How do I limit the blast radius? How do I detect it? So in theory, tools like EDR and log events and SIM that are doing sort of anomalous detection, and all the buzzwords and all the AI tools and all the magic and the special pixie dust that the vendors are selling us these days. But in theory, yeah, I mean, if you're get if you get popped by an O day, how would you know? And how would you limit the damage? That's really the what we're struggling with
Yeah,
here.
I mean, typically you learn that through second order or third order impacts, right? You get the ransomware node
Right.
or some EDR somewhere deep in your network goes off, and that's after they've been in the environment for a while.
Yeah.
I think that I would add to your list going back to basics like least privilege. Stop exposing shit to the internet. Stop it
And to be fair,
if it
not even
doesn't need to be.
a lot of these attacks also follow a social engineering endpoint first methodology. That's not what
True.
this particular article is talking about, but there is that sort of problem that isn't a matter of what's exposed, it's your users being tricked into doing something. So there's that problem. In my mind, I think about, how do I do containment? How do I limit ease of lateral movement? How do I assume breach at a certain point and limit the capability of that bad actor to move easily? Which again, much easier said than done, but that's the mindset I try to take.
Mm-hmm.
There's one other interesting takeaway, that known public proof of concept exploit code apparently to Google did not have a correlation to public exploitation by bad actors, which I found odd. So
That was odd. The other, and this was near and dear to my heart, which was that media attention does not correlate with exploitation.
Does that include like a mascot and a theme song?
I think that's exactly what it includes.
Wow.
Yes.
And
then the other takeaway was that end day exploits, so basically exploits that occur after a patch has been released, are most common before the end of the first month after that patch is released. So it's like not a 0 day, but it's like right on the heels of being one. So I would go ahead.
Is it most common because people are patching against it quickly enough, and so that's their only exploit window, or is that just when the exploit activity is taking place? There's lots of things coming into this mix that how do you figure out what is impacting that timeline?
I think it's a good question. I suspect that it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's also assuming people patch rapidly and quickly, and we know that's not true.
Correct. But I think that the key takeaway is patching, as we've talked about in the past, is boring as crap, but it's really important and is continuing to get more important. It's not getting less important. It's getting more important. And I think the ability for us to design our systems in a way, this is, by the way, one of the challenges I had as a CISO and as a security leader throughout my career was teams building systems and then trying to backport the notion of security. And I don't necessarily mean that in terms of bolting it on, like designing a system to do a thing and then figuring out how fast you can patch it in, rather than starting out of the gate with this notion that, hey, like the thing I'm building has to be patchable on a certain cadence every time, all the time, forever and ever. Amen. And that was where it was very difficult because the people that like to build their applications are very technology centric. They're very like mission and use case focused. And making your patch SLAs doesn't bring in extra money, but having extra features certainly does. And so I think that's the tension I experienced. And I don't think as an industry that we've got that trade-off set correctly. But again, this is like where every company, as we've talked about ad nauseum, like every company has their own take on risk tolerance, risk acceptance. But in my view is it's a hell of a lot easier to design systems in a way upfront that they can achieve the SLA goals, the security objectives, than it is to try to do that after the system's been designed. That's why I was becoming an advocate of this kind of a platform as a service from a IT perspective. And I know that's like probably a large company concept. As you're building your application, you have to know that this thing is going to be rebooted every 30 days. Like
right.
You have multi-factor authentication. It's just there. You have to live with it. It has EDR running on it. It's just there. And rather than having to build that, apply those things after the fact.
Yeah. Yep. But like you said, that we have this tension, and I think it's also a highly variable target that as soon as you get maybe one level of stasis going, those inputs have changed, but you're not necessarily reevaluating your methodology. I certainly, in most of my career, have always gotten this, we'll patch if we can mindset from most of the asset owners. Like, we've got patching doesn't pay the bills, like you said. And
Yeah.
but we're also trying to keep companies from having a massive breach that also doesn't pay the bills, right? That costs a lot of bills. So
Right.
it's a tough problem. And I think we live and breathe this every day. So we see this side of it. It's tough to balance that against what we've got to get this new feature rolled out, or we're going to lose this big customer, and then that's not going to pay the bills either. So there's no easy answer.
No, I agree. So our next story comes from Trend Micro's blog, and the title here is Silent Threat Red Team Tool EDR Silencer Disrupting Endpoint Security Solutions. There is a tool on GitHub called EDR Silencer that a lot of red teams use that will inject specifically in Windows. It'll inject some Windows filtering platform, effectively firewall rules that prevent various EDR, XDR agents from talking to the mothership. So even if those agents detect things that are going on, they can't actually communicate that activity is actually happening because this tool that they're using has actually severed that communication. And this is actually running the range of a whole bunch of different providers, from Carbon Black to Cylance to ESET to Qualys to Tanium, all up and down. But I found it really interesting. There's one name that's not on here.
Would
That's
it
CrowdStrike.
be CrowdStrike? Yes.
Yeah. And so I did a little bit of digging, and I actually found a discussion with a CrowdStrike engineer
Yeah.
about this very thing. And they said that no, they don't actually initiate communications from their user land componentry, which the implication there, they didn't say it explicitly, but the implication there is that it's the kernel code that's actually doing the communication with their command and control system, their
So
management
therefore,
system.
below the level of this tool to hide it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why they're not impacted by this. You can't use this specific technique to block CrowdStrike, which I think is probably another reason they like being in the kernel, which hopefully Microsoft is there trying to refactor how their EDR. And by the way, I think even their EDR was impacted by this.
Yep.
Which I thought was fascinating.
So in essence, this is a firewall tool that's saying these apps can't talk on the network, right?
Correct. Right.
At a very high level, it seems like you would want in your operating system a prioritization or override functionality of I don't care if another user land tool says I can't, I need to. Which again, at the kernel can, but in general, no, this is a high priority, important, you can't just silence it kind of logic tree for security tools. I don't know. I'm probably vastly underestimating the complexity, but sure seems like that's what I'd want. And maybe we will as a result of this research.
Yeah. We know that in the aftermath of the big CrowdStrike disaster, that Microsoft they're in the process of refactoring how EDR tools interface with Windows.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope would be that they do it in a way that doesn't make this. My hope would be that they create a facility that makes it so that this doesn't work across all of these, and rather than make it also impact CrowdStrike.
The other thing I found interesting is I was thinking, how would you counter this? And part of me was thinking, well, what if you monitored for agents going quiet? But the problem is that these are endpoint devices that come on and off the network all the time. So that doesn't work very well unless you can say this is a permanent on server type environment. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, you can do. I know that was something that I have done in the past, was setting up, basically we called them quiet sensors. So if you don't see a sensor ping in for a certain amount of time, it wasn't an incident per se, but it was something that you had to go and investigate. And sometimes it was a routing problem, or sometimes a hard drive died, or there's lots of different reasons that could have happened.
Right.
Fortunately, I never saw it being the result of some malicious activity, but I think that is something that you could conceivably do. But I don't know that's like necessarily a native functionality in most of the EDR tools.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so therefore, it would require you, the consumer, to have the sophistication to build something custom.
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the things that Trend Micro talks about here is that they have another tool to watch for the running of this tool, which makes sense. And that you end up with a bit of an arms race here, but I think it's interesting research, and I think it's. I was surprised how easily the comm channels for these tools could be blocked. I think that's what really caught me by surprise.
Me too. Me too. I would say that like the obvious answer or the obvious comment is in order for that tool to run, something bad had to happen. And so, like, why did that initial compromise not get detected? Because this is what I would call, and I think what most people would call post exploitation activity. Something has already happened. The actors already got a presence on the system. Now they're trying to cover their tracks. They're trying to hide their presence, hide feature. And so it comes down to like, you've got to make sure that you have some ability to the extent you can to detect that initial intrusion. But I think that's really hard to do because there's just damn many ways that it can happen.
Hence our previous article that we covered.
Yes. Yes, but they do have a tool to detect this tool, and I'm assuming that there will soon be a tool to kill the tool that detects that tool. And then there'll be a tool.
And to be clear, this is a known red team tool. This isn't like part of an exploit kit it's started to become, but it's easy to iterate this, by the way. It's easy for the bad guys if they wanted to just take this concept and change it. And now we're probably not even looking for the right. Then we don't have the right tool to find the tool that's blocking the tool that we need to be tooling.
Right. Right. I suppose in a way, it's not unlike Cobalt, the rampant use of Cobalt Strike.
Yeah.
In malicious attacks. I think that's a little more advanced than this is, but this is apparently pretty effective. Moving on to our next story. This one comes from the Register, and the title here is Microsoft says more ransomware stopped before reaching encryption. So, interesting article here. They point out that year over year, ransomware attacks are up 275%, which doesn't surprise me in the least. They do say that, and you keep in mind the context of the modern ransomware attack is actually twofold. One is they steal the data, and then the other is that they encrypt the data. And so they're saying that there has been a threefold decrease in the number of attacks, despite that 275% increase. There's been a threefold decrease in the number of attacks that actually get to the encryption stage. And they're crediting that on many different aspects of hygiene improvement and use of more sophisticated security tools that are detecting the ransomware encryption activity and stopping it before it can really get going. So that's goodness.
But
they point out that 90% of attacks, the ones that do get into encryption, so basically they've been successful in penetrating your environment and doing their thing, 90% of those attacks leverage unmanaged devices.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting. It goes back to asset management. Another super boring topic.
Yeah, no kidding.
They said that most attacks are using vulnerabilities, which surprises me a bit. But second to vulnerabilities is identity attacks. And they point out that while multi-factor authentication is effective, A, not everybody is using it, and B, the bad guys are adapting. And we talked about this a little bit in the last show. The bad guys are starting to adapt to the pervasive use of multi-factor authentication, and they're starting to create these bad guy in the middle scenarios where they've constructed, myriad different ways. They've constructed a way where they're they're basically sitting in the middle of an end user trying to use their two-factor
Mm-hmm.
authentication. And so it's like very interesting, especially when you take a big step back at everything we've talked about so far. You fix one problem and they adapt. Like the problem doesn't go away. It
Right.
just sloshes to a different thing. Doesn't mean that we get to stop working, but it means that you can't sit back and say, oh geez, like Microsoft recommends in this article, we moved away from one-time passwords to hardware tokens. And so we're done. That
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything, we have to recognize that I don't know how, and I don't know that Microsoft knows how, but the bad guys will adapt.
Yeah, they get a vote.
They'll adapt.
It's a true arms race. It's a battlefield, and both sides adapt to the other all the time. And it's a lot of takeaways that I could riff off on this particular article. One of which I would like to think I'm glad that our tools are starting to become slightly more effective at stopping ransomware. It should at this point with how much it's kicked our ass. And it seems to me that it's getting better at identifying and stopping during the attack chain. So it's not stopping the initial intrusion point or whatever that initial access was, but it's maybe stopping it from further on attacks.
Right.
So did it stop the exfiltration of data? Can we still get extorted? Probably. But that's good. I'll take the win. But the other thing is, not all MFA is created equal. And I think
Right.
that's one thing that we probably now need to start getting more sophisticated about is not just enable MFA, but enable phishing resistant MFA or enable intercept resistant MFA, which again becomes more complicated, becomes more costly, becomes more difficult for the average person who isn't a technology person to get their arms around. They talk, I think in this article, they talk about the prevalence of SMS based one time passwords or second factor being easily captured nowadays and easily stolen. So that's not a great two factor anymore. But we've said that for a long time. And again, it's still better than nothing. Like having a single factor, single static password that is captured and replay is still the worst case. And having some level of second factor, even if it is SMS, is better than nothing. But it's now starting to become fairly well known how to bypass.
Yeah, I think it was once SMS in particular has been considered pretty weak for quite some time. But I think even so, it was considered to be the realm of like more concerted, focused, sophisticated adversaries. And I think what they're pointing out here is that it's moving down market
Yeah.
into commercial ransomware gangs are now actually they're using pin, damn it.
SIM?
They're cloning SIMs. Thank you.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. I'm
We're
getting old.
old. It's okay.
They're starting to clone SIMs. And that was happening for a long time. This is not a new technique. But what is new is that it's actually being perpetrated by
Right.
commercially motivated
Yeah.
actors.
It's getting cheaper and easier for down market bad actors to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they do point out that their recommendation is to move away from password authentication to token-based authentication, which, as you described, is much more phishing resistant. I'm very curious to see what happens after that starts to get legs,
Right.
which will take a long time. Let's not kid ourselves. Like that's going to take years, and so we're going to have this problem for a while. We were talking with someone, and everybody will get to hear this soon enough. But we were talking with someone that the annoying thing is that the adoption of that technology isn't going to happen for most companies until they have a major breach.
Right.
Like that, like
Which,
the technology's there, it's been out there. We're talking about it. People are giving conference presentations. It's been in government publications for years, but it's going to be the thing that's going to drive most companies to adopt it is they're going to have a big ransomware attack. And in the aftermath, somebody's going to say, like, we have to do it now.
yeah.
And that makes me mad.
Well,
Just
okay,
makes me
let's
mad.
put playing devil's advocate on that is maybe the reason companies don't do it is because it's expensive and it adds
Right.
friction and it's complicated. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no guarantee you're going to get a ransomware attack. There is a
True.
guarantee of those costs and those frictions if you implement this technology. So,
Yep.
what's the right calculus there of rolling the dice against a likelihood versus outcome versus impact?
Yeah. So what you're spot on. Like I can't argue with your logic. I guess my gut feeling is that it is becoming so common, and so many companies have fallen victim to these. I don't know that you can hide behind the statistics. Like I'm just one
Sure.
of millions of companies out there, and so what's the likelihood of it hitting me? I think the reality is you probably will get hit.
Yeah. So is the
And
other side of this, which is that so many people are getting hit that companies have grown numb to it and they're like, yeah, we'll survive it.
that, I think, is becoming a real problem, by the
Yeah.
way. And I don't know what to do about that. It was the scarlet letter for a long time, and we used to like kibitz about, oh, will Target or Home Depot or Equifax, are they going to survive their breach? Like, it happens so often now. It's like background radiation.
Yeah. Shoplifting, shrinkage built into some retail establishment's budget,
Right. Yeah.
which,
The annoying part is in not all cases, but in most instances, it's not necessarily the entity itself that's the directly harmed subject. It's often like the data of people that the company that got hacked is holding. Certainly, sometimes companies have their intellectual property stolen or things like that, but a lot of times it's personal data, and so like the actual harm to a company is reputational, perhaps legal fines,
yeah,
and maybe lawsuits. But I think as it becomes more and more common, the harm to a company that gets hacked is going down and down, unless something external happens to change that. GDPR or
regulators.
CCPA or
Yeah.
regulators.
Which we have a love hate relationship with, at least I do.
Yeah. Well, everybody does. All
Yeah.
right.
It gives us plenty to talk about on this show.
It certainly does. So the last story for today comes from Bleeping Computer also. And the title here is Undercover North Korean IT Workers Now Steal Data, Extort Employers.
So when you say
We've talked
undercover, they're like in bed, like under their sheets on the
under
laptop?
under under the bed,
Oh,
actually.
wow. What if you're claustrophobic?
I guess then you can't be a North Korean spy.
I'm okay with that. I wasn't planning to be.
We've talked about this a couple of times, and there's been some high profile discussions about this, most notably starting with KnowBe4, who published a paper about their experience with hiring a North Korean person. That kind of, I would say that raised a like broad awareness in the industry. I
Mm-hmm.
think it has been happening for a while. Just to recap, what is happening is North Korea is they have relatively sophisticated people, or I guess they're working for the military, or at least that's the allegation, and they are using fake identities in cahoots with people in the U.S. who are
Cahoots.
helping them.
Good word.
Yeah,
Cahoots. I like it.
cat boots with people in the U.S. who are helping them find and get jobs. And
Right.
when they get a remote job, the company sends a laptop to a laptop farm. The people in North Korea remotely VPN, and the traditional setup for this has been to just earn money, like to actually do work, at least for some period of time, earn money, and collect that money for whatever purposes the North Korean government wants to use. Again, allegation is for weapons programs. Who
And
knows?
the reason why this is a problem is North Korea, at least for most Western countries, is on a sanctioned list that
Correct.
we're not supposed to hire those people.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's illegal to hire them for sure.
Yeah.
And who wants to be supporting their weapons program?
Russia.
Yes, it's true.
That's different topics.
They're also on the sanction list now. But the new tactic is, and I have to believe, by the way, that this is related to the broad uncovering of the scheme. The new tactic is that these people will get hired and they'll get access. They'll use their access to download lots of sensitive or confidential data off premise, off property, and then they'll try to extort the employer. And I think most of the time it happens after they've been fired for performance problems or what have you. But I suspect there's some variation in that. But the net point is that it's now not just the harm of harm and embarrassment of hiring a North Korean employee and then having to go through all of that hoopla. But now they're stealing your data and they're asking for ransomware. Otherwise, they're going to disclose it. So it's becoming like a one-armed ransomware attack.
Yeah.
Where there isn't an encryption component to it, but there is the data theft.
Look, I don't support this, but hell of an argument for return to office mandates.
Yeah, it really is. And I was actually thinking about that very thing because I think, as most people know, I'm very pro work from home.
Right.
And I have been for a long time. But this is like sanding the gears there, bad. And so it's disappointing to see.
It is. It sucks. Like without getting into too many confidences, like I was talking about this article with one of our HR people at my current company. They're like, "What the what? Wait, why? No, don't. No, just leave us alone. Why?
Why you gotta ruin my day?"
So they're annoyed. But yeah, and look, this is gonna get easier with. We're seeing some really sophisticated deepfakes that can do Zoom overlays on demand and like some of the initial recommendations, make sure you do Zoom and make sure you look at them. Like even that's going to be pretty easily gone around and bypassed and thwarted, and maybe better background. There's a lot of problems here. So I don't know, man. This is a tough one. Certainly you can fight it and you can identify it, but I think it's going to slow down hiring and make some extra hoops for potential employees to jump through, which is they're not happy about. I see a lot of people, especially in the tech industry, saying if it takes more than 2 interviews, I'm not taking your job, which frankly, I think is a little short-sighted. I think very off topic, but I think employees who say that or potential employees who say that aren't realizing that they can use those extra interviews to vet the company really well. That it's a two-way vetting.
Yeah, it's a two-way street for sure.
Yeah. So I get that it's annoying to go through 5 rounds of interviews, but if you're smart, you can use that for your own advantage as a potential employee and really get to know the company. That's completely off topic. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. And the other way you could potentially fight this, but nobody's going to do it, is much better data hygiene internally so your new hires don't get access to all this confidential data. Nobody got time for that. Let's just be clear.
Right.
That's like number 18 after patching. So
I've got two thoughts. One tongue in cheek and one serious.
First, can I guess which is which?
You can guess, yes. So the first one, it is annoying to me that in the current climate that we have, where people who have U.S. people who have significant experience are not able to get jobs. And here we are. The North Koreans are having apparently a fairly easy time getting hired.
Is it because they're real cheap?
And maybe, but I guess that's one thing that may be a flag for you too. By the way, they also talk about how the North Korean employees, who you don't know are North Koreans, have like a referral network. So they get a job and then they'll do networking in the industry and they'll refer one of their coworkers to other jobs, and it spreads out that way. The other thought that I had is in terms of what is ahead for us, because I think this is going to become a bigger problem. It's starting with North Korea, but I gotta believe this is not the end of it. And it's not just like, I don't know how it's going to manifest, but I gotta believe that there's going to be more of this, especially as you talked about, as the ease of using deepfakes and whatnot, real time is going to make this really hard. I I have a feeling that there's going to end up being, especially for companies who are focused on hiring remote and they don't have like global presence, global people all over the place. Like where I was at, we had hiring managers everywhere. Like even if they weren't your employee, you could have a manager meet with a prospective employee and do your bidding. I suspect that there is going to be something like that that eventually will be set up where you will engage a company who has local presence in all basically everywhere, and they can meet face to face with your new hire, your prospective new hire. I think that's where we're headed.
Certainly cheaper than flying people to headquarters.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good thought.
yeah,
Um, it's replacing the drug test. It's are you who you say you are test.
right,
That's
right.
interesting.
I will tell you, it is another diversion, but I've worked I've worked with global teams for a long time, for 20 plus years. And one of the challenges I had, especially in countries like India, and it's interesting because like this is a flavor of the problem I had as a hiring manager with talent in India, which was, again, this is not everywhere. I'm not saying this is bad. India is bad or Indian people are bad. This is not at all. I'm saying that I hadn't had this experience before until I had it in India, where people were applying for jobs and I don't know what you call them. Like I called them brokers, right? They
Hmm.
were super smart people and they would go to job fairs and they would purport to be someone they aren't. They would sit for interviews. They would take the pre-employment tests. They would take your coding test. They would do whatever and they would get you hired. And then you, as a person looking to get a job, would pay them some amount of money. And then they would, the whole way through, they were purporting to be this other person. And then when that person starts, it's not the person that they interviewed, it's this
Oof.
other
Which is
it's
a
this other
tough,
person.
tough position for a company to be in because it's not easy to fire in that situation.
No, it's not. And it's also difficult when there's a little bit of a language
Right.
challenge and there's like a 9.5 hour time difference, and you've never met the person face to face. And
Yeah.
so are they not who they say they are, or did they have a bad day? I don't know.
Right.
And so but I think that's a, the kind of thing that we're seeing is the very same problem. Like, how do
Mm.
you know that you're hiring and starting the person that you think you are? And I don't think it has manifested itself at the scale where it's like a huge problem, but I think we're on the cusp of it. I think the infrastructure and the awareness of this as a scheme is now out there, and I think we're really gonna start seeing it ramp up. And it scares me, again, as somebody who's so pro work from home. Like, this is really bad for that.
So I think our solve is a UN mandated and managed global digital identity verification service that
It's a great idea.
every interaction with your employer, you have to put this card in. That's like a public private key pair plus
Like one of
biometrics
the US government cards, right?
plus DNA sampling. And then
You have to lick your laptop.
we'll be fine. You don't anyway? I thought, no? In other news, now that you're unemployed, how is your laptop farm coming along that you've been building for unrelated, unknown reasons?
When we do the podcast, I put the plants up and I take all the
Right.
laptops down.
Oh,
So when
so
we're
your
done
North
here,
Koreans
I got to
are
go put the
so they can't
yeah,
work right now.
correct. It's a mild inconvenience. It's a mild inconvenience.
I
Someday.
think we need to come up with that local verification business plan and just wait for the VCs to line up.
Hell yeah.
It would be like WeWork, but for you,
Like,
Bjork.
be like we worker, but no E. It'd be,
Right.
yes. See?
Maybe if we paired this with a county password inspector, we'd have something. It's a callback to a very old joke from the show from many moons ago.
Many. All right. I think we've definitely peaked and
years ago. But yes. But hey, we put out a show. They can't all be winners.
That's right. No. I'm going to make that the title of this episode. They can't all be winners. Anyway, I hope everybody found this interesting. We always have a good time talking about this. Hopefully this is useful. Andy and I have been doing this for a really long time. And the whole purpose of this is to just help give you some context of how we think. If that's helpful, there you go. And if you like it, give us some 5-star love. And if you don't like us, give us some 5-star love before you unsubscribe. It works.
You can even watch us, which God knows why, but there's a video version of this on YouTube now.
That's right.
And I warned you, this would not be pleasant. You've all been warned.
We are devastatingly handsome.
One last thing on the last star I was just thinking, I forgot to mention, because I was thinking about deepfaking replacing my face for the comfort and sanity of our viewers. There are tons of startups out there saying we can detect deepfakes. I wonder if HR teams and hiring recruiting teams are going to start using it during Zoom interviews to see if there's a deepfake going on.
Oh, that's a good question. And there's a lot of technology because my son has done a lot of online college stuff. And there's quite a lot of, and I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not making a value judgment about it, but there's a lot of technology built up around taking exams.
Yeah.
Where you can't have a VPN running. It detects a VPN. It detects a second monitor. It detects, it does a bunch of, it detects if it sees you look away. There's a whole lot of things like that. So maybe there is something like that ahead for HR. It's
just another arms race, though. They'll figure out how the deepfake detection works and figure out how to get around that and rinse, repeat.
It's sadly true.
Anyway, back to wrapping up the show. Yes.
So where can people find you when you're not
here?
I
am on the artist formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at Lerg, L-E-R-G, and I'm on your amazing Mastodon instance, which is part of your growing empire in the Fediverse of infosec.exchange, also at Lerg, L-E-R-G. You can now find us on the YouTubes. It's still my channel. Maybe we'll rebrand it, but just look for Andrew Kalat on YouTube and you'll find our various back episodes, both the audio and the more recent episodes, audio and video. And by the way, if YouTube inserts some sort of ad, we have no control over that. So I'm sorry.
But we will benefit financially. So
yes,
just know that you're helping.
Yeah. And if you don't want to help us, watch it 4 times. That's how it triggers the algorithm that you hate us.
That's right.
I'm told.
That's right.
Is that right? I think that's right.
I think it's right.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. You can find me on infosec.exchange. It's at Jerry. And with that, we will talk again very soon. And mysterious teaser, you will soon see some more stuff from us.
Something different, something new, something exciting.
Yes.
We hope. And we hope you like it.
Take care, everybody.
See you. Bye-bye.